story and her journey to where she is today. So as usual, again, this is Mr. Joe Montone, who runs the Wingsman program for us, which I guess we'll have to change the name now. So, but we have a camera in here because the reason is, this is with Mr. Mahoney from over at East. We want to film our speakers. You guys will not be filmed at all. We just want to film what our speakers say because ultimately we'd like to put these into PSA announcements. We just did a YouTube page for Falls Township Police. We only have 4 PSAs on it, but we want to do more, and we want to kind of just put more of a message out there. And so we're hoping that this will go someplace further. So that's the reason for the filming here. None of you guys will be on the film, but if you ask questions, obviously your voice will be there. But primarily, it's just to have Nancy on film. So I don't want you guys to be intimidated by that. So. Nancy, I guess all yours, or Joe, do you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us back again. And again, the Wingsmen and Wingswomen program is really about helping you to make great decisions. Our job is to really cultivate the talks of people who have a background, very interesting background. Today, Nancy is going to talk to you a lot about her background regarding drug addiction and some of the other things that revolve around that kind of a lifestyle. And we brought you some men before, and I hope they had an impact on you. I see a lot of the students here I've seen before, but it's just a privilege and a pleasure to be here. Our job is to help you to make great decisions in your life. Okay, that's what our job is. So each and every week, every decision counts. It really makes a difference. There are consequences for good and bad decisions. Our job is just to help you to make great choices, wise decisions, and then to go forward from there. So with that, I want to introduce Nancy, and thanks for coming back again. Nancy was with us at the Pennsbury High School East, and now she's with us at the West. So thanks for being here.
Hi everybody. My name is Nancy, and I met Joe 2 years ago because my fiance was in a men's program, men's Christian program. And Joe goes there and every week to teach these guys how to live the right kind of life, to make the right choices, to make the right decisions. And unfortunately, I did not make the right decisions when I was your age. When I was 15 years old, I started to do drugs, and I did methamphetamine, and I made poor choices even before that. My choices were, I was kind of like in that survival mode, that manipulation mode, where I was going to get what I wanted, what I felt like I needed when I needed it. So I started shoplifting, because I wanted to have nicer clothes. And these were my role models. The people that I hooked up with were, one of my best friends became somebody that knew how to shoplift well. And, so the more stuff that I got away with, I believe, because I didn't suffer any consequences for making those kinds of decisions, then other things came later on. Like doing the drugs. I wanted to live my life so fast. I wanted it all, and I wanted it all right now. I got in a relationship when I was 14 years old, because I was looking for this male to take care of me, to give me the things that I didn't have, to supply the love that I needed, to supply the material things that I needed. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't know anything. All I knew is that I wanted to be comforted, and then he went away, and he was in the Army, and I wound up getting high with my uncle, and as soon as I did that, it was like I found this thing that took me away from everything else, that made me feel good, and it was the first thing that ever made me feel that way. But the truth of the matter was that I was 15 years old when I did it, and I didn't even know what feelings were yet, because I'd never really felt them. You know, the only feeling that I felt was anger and this kind of chip on my shoulder, like I should have had it better than this. You know, and then just being angry, you know, and making decisions off of that. I never felt sadness. You know, I never learned how to process my feelings. I never even learned how to label my feelings. You know, and you know, it took a long time, and I proceeded to go on this way. You know, I graduated high school, got married, and had a baby in the same year. You know, and I thought that that was really cool. You know what I mean? Like, I was growing up, I was grown. You know, and I felt before that you couldn't tell me anything because I was grown. You know, like, I got engaged before I graduated high school. You know, so, like, I was cool. I was better than everybody else. Yous were all kids, and I was, like, you know, I was cool. And, you know, on the outside, I was always trying to make it look like I had it all together. You know, and the truth of the matter is that until I got clean and sober, I didn't even know what together was. You know, I found out that every decision that I was making, everything that I was doing was the negative way to do things. You know, and they had to teach me, number one, how to label my feelings and allow me to have these feelings. You know, and to accept myself for who I was, to learn who I am. You know what I mean? To challenge myself and do some things so that I could have some self-esteem. I wanted to pretend that I had this self-esteem. I wanted you to think I had this self-esteem, and I didn't even know what it was. You know, when I went into the rehab, the first thing they did was an intake, and this doctor, you know, said to me, very poor, low self-esteem. And I went out of that room and I walked back in and I said, you take that off that paper. You know what I mean? I do not have poor self-esteem. And the truth of the matter was, you know, I mean, I didn't even know what it was. Self-esteem is something that you earn. Self-esteem is like, you know, you having the courage to take a challenge, you know, and to go into something, whether you're afraid of going into it or not. You know, I was always afraid of, I can't do this. Because I never was challenged to do anything. I put myself in a situation where, you know, I wanted somebody to take care of me, you know, and so I was 23 years old. You know, I got married, like I said, at like 17, 18, around there, and I lost my arm when I was 23 from shooting up drugs. You know, I had this little boy. This little boy was 5 years old. You know, and you know, I tried to hold it together for a little while. You know, by being a mom. You know, and then I started using the drugs again, and then I lost my arm. You know, and I still tried to hold it all together. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I can't even understand why I didn't know right then and there that I had a problem. And that's how big this thing is. You know, it's like, I found a way to justify everything that I was doing. I wasn't using every day, so therefore I wasn't an addict. I wasn't shooting up, you know what I mean, myself, so therefore, like, I wasn't going to get so bad. But every 3 days I would get high and I would get drunk, you know, and then I would go home. You know, like, you know, after I got high and I got drunk, I would go home and I would play mom for a little while, and then I would go out because I didn't know how to deal with my feelings. I didn't know how to deal with any frustration. And the one thing that I did was I was used to pointing the blame and saying, I'm going out and I'm doing this because you know, I'll show you. You know, and that's pretty much all that I knew how to do for a long time. And then after I lost my arm, I wanted it to look like I had it all together because I had planned to have a baby right after TJ was like, you know, around 6 years old. So I lost my arm in '79, got pregnant and had a baby in 1980. I was in the hospital for 6 months and got pregnant right away. You know, I went to Canada to get a bionic arm, and I realized that I was pregnant again. So I had 2 kids, you know, and, you know, I would be okay, be good as long as I was pregnant, you know, but then the minute that I had that baby, it was like, you know, I'm going out now. I'm going to party, you know what I mean, because I've been deprived all this time. And because I would think that it was a reward to me. But you know what, all it was self-destruction, you know, because afterward, you know, like after a while, it was like this partying life and these drugs and all this stuff was not fun. You know, it really wasn't fun anymore. It was just something, a behavior that I just kept doing over and over again. And then it was a thing that I would feel guilty for because I wasn't there for my kids. You know, I wasn't a good mom. I wasn't a good wife. I had no self-control. I would lay there and then I would feel guilty. You know what I mean? And tell myself I'm not going to do this anymore. You know what I mean? At one time, I stopped myself from doing it for 3 weeks. You know? And like, you know, I always thought that I could maybe do it by myself. You know? And right before I lost my arm, the reason that I got high that time, right before I lost my arm, is because I had been good for once for Christmas and New Year's. I had stayed home and been a mom. And my reward was I was going out to get high. Okay, and then after I got high, that's when I wound up in a hospital. You know, with gas gangrene and I was dying. You know what I'm saying? And that wasn't even enough. You know, to lose my arm was not enough to stop me. I needed help. You see, I needed somebody to teach me how to deal with my addiction. Somebody to teach me how to deal with my feelings. Somebody to teach me that it was okay to have these feelings. And then when I finally got this, because it was painful, you know what I mean? It was really painful. I had to talk about all the things that were inside of here because they affect you. Because I used to tell myself, oh, it didn't matter what happened to me when I was a child. I'm an adult now. You know what I mean? And I'm not looking back. But all that stuff did affect me. You know, and then when I finally got the help, and they taught me how to label my feelings, and they said, you know, this is the way that your feelings are. You have this feeling down here, you know, like sadness, frustration, you know, and you packed them all in there, and the only one that was coming out was anger. I had to learn to deal with all those other things that were in there. You know, so that I wasn't angry all the time. And then I found, and I was never grateful for anything, you know what I mean, before I got this help. And then I started to be grateful for things, to see myself, to be able to look into myself, to challenge myself. I divorced my husband. I lived by myself for 6 years. I raised my kids. I got a house all by myself. I started my own cleaning business, you know, and then you know, that's how I got self-esteem. You know what I mean? I finally earned some self-esteem. You know, and today, like, it gets better. You know what I mean? A little by little. You know what I mean? And all I can say, if there's stuff in there, start dealing with it now. You know what I mean? Don't drag it around with you for a long time. And let it be self-destructive. You know, deal with it. If it's painful, deal with it. Find somebody that you can talk to. I didn't have anybody I could talk to. You know, like my role models were the other kids that were messed up. You know what I mean? And like, we hung together and did what we did. You know? And, you know, and if I look back, I can say that I could have found somebody that I could talk to. You know? There was a lady that lived down the street and her kids were great. You know what I mean? Not that many kids were allowed to play with me because my family was insane. You know what I mean? But I could have talked to her because that lady actually really cared about me. But I didn't know how to open up. You know? And, you know, when I started to let it all out. You know what I mean? I started to live. I started to get a life. I started to be able to be a parent. I started to learn who I was, like I said. I learned, and then I learned that it was okay to deal with these emotions. You know, and to struggle through them. And then once I struggled through them, I got to the other side. You know, it's like learning all these life lessons. You know, and you know, today I can honestly say that I love myself. I like myself. I am not perfect. You know what I mean? It's not that I don't make any mistakes today, but I see the whole picture of me. You know what I mean? And the program has taught me, it's like, there's a little bit of bad in the best of us, and a little bit of good, you know what I mean, in the worst of us. You know, so things like that, just hearing these little things, helped me to be okay with myself, because I thought that I was all bad. And I wasn't. You know? And, you know, so I had to do a lot of, you know, inner work, you know, to get where I am today. And, you know, anybody that's, if you don't do it, you're going to wind up in some place like a house at Adonai. I went to Eagleville, you're going to wind up there. You know, and my fiance, I married him, you know, and he's in the house of Adonai again. He's 50 years old. There's a lot of people that are in the house of Adonai, and they're like older, so much older, and they didn't get it. And then there's some of them that are younger, you know what I mean? And it just comes down to really making a decision, you know what I mean, that, yeah, I'm going to try to do this. People will help you along the way. You know what I mean? Like, they will really, really help you. They will love you, and they will be there for you. You know? You just got to open up a little bit, you know, and trust it. And you know what? We all know who to trust. You know? We all know who to trust. We trust the person that has some good character, that doesn't walk around talking about everybody else, and that can truly be there for you. You know? And, you know, or somebody that's been through it. You know, and that has experience, you know, and compassion. And I didn't find all of that until I got in the recovery, you know what I mean? And so here I sit today with my emotions, and I'm going to cry now. I mean, it's okay.
Nancy, I have a question for you. You
Sure.
talked about mentioning that you didn't feel that you were an addict because you didn't shoot yourself.
Yes.
So you would have other people just inject you with methamphetamine.
Yes.
What was it like when that abscess developed? Can you walk us through that in your arm, those couple days?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's like abscesses become common when you're shooting up drugs. You know, so what it is like you'll have a miss, and then it will, you know, stay there, you know, and get infected and, you know, swell up, and then they have to go and cut it open. So that's kind of, you know, something that happened. So they thought that it was an abscess. And, you know, and then when I got in there, and, you know, after a little while, they were going to send me home. You know, and then they said, let's keep her overnight. And they kept me overnight, and then they found out that that I had gas gangrene. You know, and you know, but I had stayed home for like around, you know, I don't know, it was like 48 hours or something, not going for medical attention because I thought that this was just an abscess, you know, and so used to thinking like, you know, oh, well, this will go away, you know what I mean, just let me lay here for a little while and it'll get better, you know. That's another thing too, it was like, I didn't know how to make good decisions for myself. I didn't even know when I was in trouble like that. You know. And then I waited for my husband to come home from the store, and then, you know, I finally, you know, went to the hospital. And the thing was killing me, like it was rapid. I blew up, you know, I smelled gas, there was gas fumes coming off my body. They couldn't operate on me for 3 weeks, because I was dying. You know, and I was in the hospital for 6 months.
What was your bottom like?
Pardon me?
Your bottom, when you just realized you wanted help? What was it like?
Well, laying there feeling that way, like, you know, like guilty and not being able to stop, like I knew that for a long time. But, it was those feelings. You know what I mean? Knowing that I needed help. And being introduced a little bit, you know, to the program, like having a little bit of hope. You know, like, you know, God reaches down and took me out of my craziness. You know what I mean? Like He had to reach down and take me there. You know, in the craziest kind of ways. But like somebody, a guy took me to a meeting. The first thing was he took me to an NA meeting, and I was like, oh wow, that's me, you know? And like it didn't happen right away. It just didn't. It happened a little bit and a little bit, you know? Because I didn't know how to, I just didn't, you know, and the addiction takes over. Yeah, John.
And Nancy, can you speak about the impact that your addiction had on your son and beyond that?
When I left to go get clean, he's my ex-husband now, yeah. But when I left to go get clean, he started getting high. Okay, and I took my two girls and we moved up to Norristown, and he stayed, you know, TJ stayed with him, and you know, and he started using, and then, you know, like maybe 3 or 4 years later, I guess, I'm not sure. You know, his father got clean, and then at about 17, TJ got clean for a little bit, you know, and then he started to sell pot. Like he wasn't using it, but he was selling it. You know, it's just part of that hustle and like part of that game. You know, like you think you can get over and you can do these things. But eventually, you know, he started using, and when he started using, you know, other things, and it got to heroin, you know. And he would go in and out of recovery, but he would let things distract him. You know what I mean? And that happens a lot too. You know, he's betting on football games, you know, all that kind of stuff to distract him, and he stopped making meetings. And, you know, in the end of it, he went back to selling drugs again. You know, and he was in court, he was using, and he died. He died. He died from this disease. He got endocarditis, and he died. And his son, he had a baby, and his son was almost 3 years old. And I've been raising him since then. His mother is a heroin addict, you know, and right now I have this kid in therapy. He's awesome. You know, he has dreams. You know, and there's a lot of people that love him, but of course things ain't gonna be perfect for him either. And things are not perfect for any of us. You know what I mean? That's the bottom line. You know, but you don't have to go through it by yourself. You know, and I always thought that nobody else was going through what I was going through. There's a lot of people that were going through what I was going through. You know, and now, like, we all support each other. You know, we all love each other. You know, and it's like, that's what the program's all about. You know, I didn't mean like going to AA or NA or anything like that. It's the support and the love that you get.
You said you first used your uncle. Why did he give you meth for that?
No, because he was getting high. My uncle was like 1.5 years older than me. You know, and I always hung around with him. You know, and he was getting high, and other people, and I just wanted to experience it. You know, I experimented with some other drugs, and once you experiment, you're going to find the one that you fall in love with. And that was the one I fell in love with.
What's the best way to reach out to someone and try to have them open up to you, in your opinion?
I guess it depends on where they're at, you know what I mean, and who they are, you know, but if you really want to be there for them, you know, tell them that you love them, you know what I mean, and that you want to support them and be there and direct them to some place where they can get real professional help, you know what I mean, where they can learn what, you know, what it is. I had to learn everything, you know, I mean, I absolutely knew nothing. They taught me about different drugs and how they affect your body and how long they stay in your system. You know what I mean? Like, I had to learn so much, you know, but so they need to learn these things, you know, and they need professional help.
So you believe the meetings like truly help?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people need a rehab, sometimes people need a detox. It depends on where they're at, you know. And they do need somebody to help them because like they are not thinking right. So you can direct them in that path, you know, and pray. You know, that works a lot. You know, I wouldn't even be where I'm at if I didn't pray. Yeah.
Have you ever used in front of your kids?
No. No, that also made me better than everybody else.
Nancy, how many meetings do you go to maintain your sobriety?
At least 5.
At least 5 a week?
Yes.
How long have you been sober?
I've been sober. I haven't done meth or drank since 1984. You know, but I did relapse on some prescription medication. So I have been sober since July. It's a year, but you know, and I guess what, 7 months, something like that. And that's the thing too. Like I knew what recovery was, so I knew what to go back to. You know.
You still have an urge to use?
Sure.
How strong?
Well, the longer that I've been clean, it's not as strong in the bend because I make meetings. You know, you start to understand and you think about the consequences. So as soon as you start to think about that drug, you think about the consequences, you think about how much better your life is, and then you don't want to go back to it. But in the beginning, that's all I wanted to do was use. And then I had to make meetings. It was like they say, make 90 meetings in 90 days. And it's because it takes that long for your head to clear up. You know, it's a mental, physical, and spiritual disease. You know, and you have to feed yourself mentally at the meetings. The physical part is that once you put it in your system, it's there. Then the compulsion to use is there. You know, we have no more impulse. There's just impulse. We have no more control once we start using. So it's physical, and then it's spiritual. There's a lot of spiritual maintenance that you have to do in order to continue on the right path and do the right thing. But the beautiful part is that all these other people are doing it too, you know. And they are just like me, and they are there for me when I need them. You know, and I've learned who to trust and who not to trust. And to have them be there for me for real, you know what I mean? When I'm going through some real tough stuff, you know, the meetings, my higher power, and the people that I've learned to love and receive love from them. You know, that was a big one. Because I didn't trust people.
Nancy, you've had a lot of difficult experiences in your life. Have you ever contemplated harming yourself?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, when I was 16, you know, I mean, like, there was just sheer craziness. Like, I would jump from my mother's house to my father's house, and there was a lot of, you know, chaos. There was, you know, my uncle, of course, was using, and then there was alcoholics, and I seen this craziness. My dad was like, you know, sort of like, what's the use? You know, so I took, you know, all these, I heard aspirins can kill you, so I took a whole bunch of aspirins to kill myself. You know, I mean, I just wanted it to end. And then later on, even, you know, like after I had my daughter, you know, and this is just horrible. But after I had her, I went out on that binge, you know, and I came back, and they were just sitting there like I never walked in the room, you know, and the babysitter's holding this little baby, you know, and I just felt like unwanted, unloved, you know, and then I took a bunch of sedatives, you know, and you know, they brought me back, you know, and So yeah, I have felt like I don't know with.
Question?
Yeah.
How do you cope with all your feelings and emotions?
I cope with all my feelings and emotions by, like I said, I have some people in my life that I truly trust. I have people that I've been there for, you know, and that's how it works too. You're there for another person, you know, and you develop these relationships, and then they're there for you. You know what I mean? Like there's a few special people, you know, you have a sponsor, you know, and they help you by giving you direction, you know, how to walk through this sobriety. They're there for you, but that's the biggest thing. You gotta learn to, you know, take direction, to trust somebody, you know, and we're not stupid. We do know who to trust. You know what I mean? Because when you're out there, you gotta look all around and see who you can trust and who you can't trust. You know, so when you get sober, you know who to trust too. You know. But they get me through it. Meetings get me through it. You know, and higher power gets me through it. You know, and I've learned some things. I've learned how to write. You know what I mean? To process my emotions. To help me to understand that these are my real emotions. And that when I go to express myself to somebody else, you know what I mean? I know exactly what it is. Before I used to be like, I didn't know. I was just lost. And like, you know, somebody could tell me like, you don't feel that way. Go ahead, babe.
What are your like coping skills?
My coping skills are, it's taking care of the mental, spiritual, and physical aspect of this disease. Like, my coping skills are in the morning, you know what I mean, like I pray. I get in touch with my higher power, you know what I mean, I ask to do His perfect will every day, you know, and then, you know, if I'm struggling with something, and sometimes it's just me learning more things about myself, you know, I continue to, I use my sponsor, I pray. God seems to put other people in my life, you know, that have the same exact experiences. It just seems to work that way. You know what I mean? It's a spiritual thing too. Like that actually really works. So I mean, that's how I cope. Yeah.
What's your favorite book in the Bible?
I like the chapters in there's a couple of them, you know what I mean? There's Psalms. You know, my favorite is Psalm 139.
That's actually my favorite book as well. Well, not chapter.
But yeah, if you read Psalm 139, you would understand. You know what I mean? You know, that it just says that God knows us before we're even here. He knows every trial that we're ever going to have.
Can you do something more?
Yes, it is.
What do you do in like your spare time, like before you would get high? But like, do you have different activities or hobbies you like do now?
Like I do now?
Yeah,
That I
like
do
instead
now.
of like getting like the times you would get high, like what do you do now?
Oh, okay. Well, right now I raise Jake. I mean, pretty much that's a lot of my activity, you know, but, you know, my husband is a singer-songwriter, you know, and so we go and, you know, he sings and, you know, we go to Christian events, you know, things, and, you know, my friends, you know what I mean? I go to AA, you know, and I have those people in my life, and I try to be there for somebody if they need me.
How did the kids feel when they found out what you were doing?
My kids were not born yet. My kids were so young when they were little. My kids were like three and 4 when I got clean. So they didn't know really, you know, what was going on. They knew I didn't have an arm and they had to deal with that.
Nancy, this is second time coming to the school here. How do you feel about talking to the students? How does that make you feel today? And what is your message for them?
I guess my message is how much pain this causes, you know, and like I look at you and I think of all the things that I went through when I was your age, you know, and I wish that somebody had come and informed me, you know, and told me about these things, you know, so I wouldn't have to walk around and just act like I was cool and I was tough, you know, and because that was just, it was a mask. It was a mask. And I didn't know who I was, in reality. I just didn't know who I was. I was pretending, you know. And when I lost my arm, you know, it's like 30-something years ago. I guess yeah, but more than that, getting old. I went into the bar and I said, oh yeah, I guess that, you know, I know why I lost my arm, so that I could go and tell kids this is what happens if you do drugs. You know, and a long time later, but here I sit, you know. And when I look at you, it's just, I kind of know what you're feeling and thinking, you know.
Has it been a struggle for the past like 30 years for you with losing an arm?
With losing the arm, I'm kind of stubborn and independent. And like I told myself that people are going to they're going to perceive me the way that I act. So if I act like, you know, I don't care about, I'm okay, you know, that's the way I get treated. A lot of people forget that I only have one arm. You know what I mean? I've done everything. I've had that cleaning service, you know, on my own. I raised my kids for like 6 years on my own. I went and got a job at the stock exchange later on. You know what I mean? Like I just had to challenge myself. You know, and I wanted to teach my daughters. You know what I mean? That these are the things that you should do. You know, so and I didn't let it hold me back.
Was it hard, like, raising kids?
Oh, it was horrible in the beginning. You know, for one thing, it was like, at that time, it was like I was ready to, like, you know, I was starting to, you know, be living, like I was married all my life, pretty much, you know what I mean? And so now, me and my husband were going out and we're going on, you know, trips for the weekend. I had a full-time job, you know, a good job. He was working. So, you know, I had to quit working. I did have physical issues, but I had to quit working. And I had to raise this 3-year-old kid, you know, and I didn't even know what I was doing at that point. You know, it was hard. And I felt like alone. There was no other women my age, the friends that I had, they wouldn't want to be interested in grandchildren, you know, hanging around. But then a girl that that I knew, you know, was in the same situation, you know, it wound up, and when we got together, and like I said, we'll find somebody that's going through it themselves, and we walk through it together. Go ahead, babe. Did you have your hand up? Oh, okay.
How are daily activities when you first lost your
Well, when I first lost my arm, like, thank God, I guess, that it was my left arm and not my right arm, you know, and I just, you know, got up and started to do things that I needed to do. Like, I wasn't asking anybody else to do them for me. And when I had trouble, I would say a little prayer, like, hey, Jesus, help me. You know what I mean? And I didn't feel like I was handicapped. I didn't admit I was handicapped until I was 50. You know what I mean? I did everything. I, you know, took all the groceries in the house and, you know, I just did everything, you know? And I, you know, I was a mom right away, busy, had 2 kids.
What would your advice be to the young people in the room who will experiment, will drink occasionally, maybe experiment with recreational drugs on the weekends, and don't really think that they have an issue, and just kind of dismiss it as all part of adolescence?
That's what I thought. I thought that it was all part of adolescence, and I thought that it was normal, and I thought that, you know, like, oh, well, we're going out and we're having fun, you know, so I would like start experimenting with different things, like alcohol, hash, you know, LSD, you know, a couple of things, and you know, and then when I found the meth, because if you experiment, you do enough of those things, you're going to find the one that you like, you know, and if you, I was, you know what I mean, and it was normal, like everybody I was around was like that, you know, and not that that's an excuse, it's just that addiction is something that really grabs a hold of you. At first it's fun, you know, at first it's harmless, you know, and then it becomes something that just destroys you and everybody around you, you know, and like I said, I found ways to justify this, you know, you can always find a way to justify it, you know, and I, you know, I think we're all pretty good at that.
All right, guys, well, thank you all very much. And thank you. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you for your attention to her. That was great respect. I don't know if Ms. Gogan had made extra copies.